They walked among us as leaders, visionaries, and saviors, men and women who promised order from chaos, protection from peril, and progress from pain. But beneath the banners of revolution and reform, their hands dripped with the blood of millions, twisting trust into terror. These are the 10 most dangerous souls history has ever unleashed, ordinary ambitions gone catastrophically wrong, and the fragile threads of justice that eventually unraveled them. These tales of power twisted into peril are just the beginning. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell now, so the Crime O'Clock delivers every chilling chapter straight to your feed before the shadows close in. Case 1. The Dictator's Canvas. Adolf Hitler, a struggling artist, once dreamed of beauty on a page, until he began sketching in the ashes of 6 million lives. In the smoky taverns of early 20th century Vienna, Adolf Hitler was just another face in the crowd, a failed painter with a mustache that hid more than it revealed. Born in 1889 in the sleepy Austrian town of Braunau am Inn, he grew up in a middle-class home, the son of a stern customs official who clashed endlessly with his dreamy, architecture-obsessed boy. Young Adolf sketched buildings and landscapes with a fervor that bordered on obsession, enrolling in the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts in 1907, only to be rejected twice for his lack of talent in the human form. No sense of color, the examiners noted dryly. Undeterred, he scraped by selling postcards and watercolors to tourists, living in men's hostels where he absorbed the city's undercurrents of anti-Semitism and nationalist fervor. Vienna in those years was a cauldron of empires crumbling, the Austro-Hungarian monarchy teetering under ethnic tensions, intellectuals debating the death of God, and street orators railing against the Jewish menace that seemed to explain every woe. Hitler, with his piercing blue eyes and a voice that could shift from whispered thunder, found his first audience among the dispossessed. He devoured pamphlets by pan-German nationalists, sketching not just art but ideologies, visions of a pure Aryan race rising from the ruins of multiculturalism. By 1913, poverty and rejection drove him across the border to Munich, where the outbreak of World War I in 1914 became his salvation. Enlisting in the German army, he served as a dispatch runner on the Western Front, earning the Iron Cross for bravery amid the mud and machine guns of Ypres and the Somme. Gassed in 1918, he lay in a hospital bed as news of Germany's defeat filtered in. The Kaiser abdicated. The Treaty of Versailles loomed like a guillotine. To Hitler, this wasn't just loss, it was betrayal. The November criminals, Jews, socialists, and weak politicians had stabbed Germany in the back. He ranted in letters to comrades, discharged and adrift in Munich's beer halls. He joined the tiny German Workers' Party, a fringe group of nationalists. With his oratorical fire, he reshaped it into the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazis, becoming its leader by 1921. At 32, he was no longer the starving artist, but a magnetic figure, clad in a brown shirt, promising to restore Germany's glory. Crowds swelled from dozens to thousands, drawn to his speeches that painted vivid pictures of a 1,000-year Reich, free from the chains of Versailles. By 1923, his audacity peaked in the beer hall putsch, a failed coup in Munich that landed him in Landsberg prison. There, dictating to a loyal secretary named Rudolf Hess, he penned Mein Kampf, a manifesto blending autobiography, anti-Semitism, and blueprints for conquest. Released after 9 months, Hitler learned from failure. Infiltrate, don't assault. The Nazis rebranded as a political machine, exploiting the Great Depression's despair. Hyperinflation had turned wheelbarrows of marks into worthless paper. Unemployment clawed at 30%. In this vacuum, Hitler's persona bloomed, a messianic figure who spoke to the everyman's rage, his failed canvases now metaphors for a nation's erased potential. By 1932, the Nazis were the largest party in the Reichstag. On January 30th, 1933, President Paul von Hindenburg appointed him chancellor, believing he could be controlled. It's like taming a tiger, one advisor quipped, but tigers don't share power. The fall came not in a single thunderclap, but in a creeping fog that choked Germany by degrees. It began with the Reichstag fire on February 27, 1933, a blaze that gutted the Parliament building, blamed on a lone Dutch communist, Marinus van der Lubbe. Whether staged or seized upon, Hitler used it as pretext for the Reichstag fire decree, suspending civil liberties overnight. Press muzzled, opponents arrested, unions dissolved. The machinery of democracy unraveled like a poorly woven tapestry. By March, The Enabling Act granted him dictatorial powers, transforming the Weimar Republic into the Third Reich. Behind the image of respectability, a booming economy via public works, the 1936 Berlin Olympics, showcasing Aryan vigor. Something darker was growing. Hitler, now Führer after Hindenburg's death in 1934, purged rivals in the Night of the Long Knives, executing Ernst Röhm and SA leaders in a bloodbath that shocked even his inner circle. The revolution is over, he declared, but it was just beginning its global spiral. Anti-Semitism, once rhetorical flourishes in beer halls, hardened into law. The Nuremberg Laws of 1935 stripped Jews of citizenship, forbidding marriages across racial lines. Kristallnacht in 1938 shattered that illusion of restraint. Synagogues torched, 30,000 Jewish men dragged to camps, windows of shops glittering like deadly confetti on Berlin streets. Yet the true abyss yawned with the invasion of Poland on September 1st, 1939. Blitzkrieg lightning war rolled over borders, but Hitler's war machine demanded more than territory. It craved erasure. In the occupied East, Einsatzgruppen, mobile killing squads, followed the Wehrmacht, executing intellectuals, partisans, and Jews in mass shootings that left ravines like Babi Yar choked with 33,000 bodies in 2 days. By 1941, as Operation Barbarossa hurled 3 million troops into the Soviet Union, the final solution crystallized at Wannsee in January 1942. Reinhard Heydrich, the blonde beast, convened bureaucrats to orchestrate industrialized murder, gas chambers at Auschwitz, Treblinka, Sobibor. Trains rattled from across Europe, unloading not passengers but product. Children separated from mothers with gloved hands wave. The unfit gassed on arrival. 6 million Jews, alongside millions of Roma, Slav, disabled, and politicals, vanished into the arithmetic of evil. Hitler, from his Wolf's Lair bunker, sketched no remorse, only expansion, dreaming of a Lebensraum from Atlantic to Urals, his artist's eye now framing continents in blood. What investigators found next would change everything, though in Hitler's case, the pursuit was a war unto itself. Allied intelligence pieced the horror from fragments, intercepted Enigma codes revealing death camp quotas, smuggled reports from Polish resistance detailing gas vans at Chelmno, aerial photos of Auschwitz's crematoria belching smoke. In the West, the Office of Strategic Services, precursor to the CIA, recruited spies like Wilhelm Canaris, head of the Abwehr, who leaked plans while plotting Hitler's assassination. The White Rose student group in Munich distributed leaflets exposing the regime's crimes, their words, "We will not be silent," earning them the guillotine. But escalation came from within. The July 20th, 1944, bomb plot by Klaus von Stauffenberg, who detonated explosives in the Wolf's Lair, wounding the Führer but failing to kill him. Retaliation was swift. 5,000 executions. Families hanged from meat hooks in Plötzensee prison. As Allied armies closed in, from Normandy's beaches to the Rhine's crossings, the Red Army unearthed the first camps. At Majdanek in July 1944, Soviet troops stumbled on warehouses of shoes, hair, and ashes, evidence too grotesque for initial belief. Dwight Eisenhower, Turing Ordorf in April 1945, ordered every soldier and local to witness. Cameras roll and etch the unimaginable into film. "We are told the American soldier does not know what he is fighting for," Eisenhower wrote. Now, at least, he will know what he is fighting against. By then, Hitler's delusion fractured. Holed up in the Führer bunker beneath Berlin's chancellery, he raved of miracle weapons as Soviet shells cratered the streets above. His marriage to Eva Braun, a fleeting domesticity amid the end, couldn't stem the tide. The trial, in a sense, was history's own Nuremberg, November 1945 to October 1946, where 22 top Nazis face an international tribunal in the Palace of Justice. But for Hitler, consequences arrived swifter, more personal. On April 29, 1945, with Soviet troops 300 yards from bunker, he dictated his will, blaming international jury for the war, then retreated to his study. At 3:30 p.m. the next day, a gunshot echoed. Braun had swallowed cyanide. Hitler followed suit, his body doused in petrol and burned in the Reich Chancellery Garden. Dental records confirmed it days later, amid the rubble. Nuremberg's revelations unfolded without him. Hermann Göring's bluster crumbling under evidence of slave labor at IG Farben. Rudolf Haas, Auschwitz commandant, confessing to 2.5 million gassed, his testimony as clinical as a ledger, 12 death sentences, including Ribbentrop and Keitel. Hanged on October 16, 1946. The gallows trapdoor slamming like final punctuation. Yet Hitler's shadow loomed. The judges declared his regime's aggression a crime against humanity, codifying genocide in law for the first time. In the aftermath, the world rebuilt on fault lines he etched. Israel rising from Europe's graves. The Cold War partitioning his conquered East. Denazification trials purging 8.5 million Germans of complicity. But reflection lingers in the ordinary turned monstrous. How a rejected artist's resentment, amplified by economic despair and nationalist myths, forged the century's greatest cataclysm. Hitler's danger wasn't innate genius, but his exploitation of human frailty, the allure of simple scapegoats for complex pains. 6 million voices silenced, yet their echo demands vigilance. Unchecked charisma can redraw maps in fire, and history's canvases, once bloodied, never fully washed clean. He sketched a 1,000-year empire, but it crumbled in 12 years, leaving only scorched earth and the silence of the vanished. Case 2. The engineer's shadow, Joseph Stalin. He built an empire on steel and fear, but the blueprints of the graves of 20 million souls he deemed expendable. In the frostbitten villages of rural Georgia at the turn of the century, Iosif Vissarionovich Dzugashvili was a boy forged in hardship, his world a tapestry of orthodox icons and revolutionary whispers. Born in 1878 in the mud-walled town of Gori, under the sprawling shadow of the Russian Empire, young Iosif, later Joseph, grew up the son of a cobbler turned abusive drunk and a devout mother who dreamed of him as a priest. The Caucasus Mountains cradled a cauldron of cultures, Georgian poets reciting epics, Armenian merchants haggling in Tiflis bazaars, and Cossack patrols enforcing Tsarist order amid simmering ethnic unrest. Expelled from Tiflis Theological Seminary in 1899 from Marxist leanings, his essays on dialectics more fervent than scripture, Stalin drifted into the underbelly of Baku's oil fields, where proletarian agitators plotted in smoke-filled cellars. At 21, he joined the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party, aligning with Lenin's Bolshevik faction during the 1903 split. Arrested repeatedly, Siberia's frozen gulags became his unwilling classrooms. He escaped 7 times, earning the moniker the Sapper for his meticulous undermining of authority. By 1912, as editor of Zvezda newspaper, he penned pseudonymous articles under Koba, a Robin Hood-like alias from Georgian folklore, railing against the autocracy's iron fist. The 1917 February Revolution toppled the Tsar, but it was October's chaos, Bolshevik storming of the Winter Palace, that propelled him forward. At 39, Stalin was no frontline firebrand like Trotsky. He orchestrated from the shadows, managing nationalities in the fledgling Soviet government. The Russian Civil War, 1918 to 1922, tested his mettle. As commissar in Tsaritsyn, later Stalingrad, he authorized brutal grain requisitions from starving peasants, executing kulaks, supposed rich farmers, as class enemies. A single blow to the head, he wired Lenin, justifying summary killings that left Volga towns echoing with widows' wails. Yet his loyalty during the Polish-Soviet War's defeats painted him indispensable. By 1922, Lenin, stroke-ridden, named him General Secretary of the Communist Party, a bureaucratic post-Lenin later warned against in his testament, calling Stalin too rude to wield such power. Ignored, Stalin maneuvered masterfully, ally with moderates to sideline Trotsky, then purging them too. Lenin's death in 1924 left a vacuum. Stalin, with his pockmarked face, drooping mustache, and Georgian accents softened to Russian cadences, emerged as the quiet consolidator. He projected the image of the humble engineer, son of the soil, builder of bridges, promising socialism in one country over Trotsky's global revolution. Factories rose along the Dnieper, collective farms dotted the steppes. Propaganda posters depict him as Uncle Joe, pipe in hand, guiding the proletariat's hand. By 1927, at the 15-Party Congress, he was unchallenged, his rivals exiled or silenced. The Soviet Union, spanning 11 time zones, pulsed with 5-year plans. Steel output tripled, literacy soared from 30 to 80%. To the world, Stalin was the architect of modernity, hosting diplomats in the Kremlin's gilded halls, his toast to eternal friendship masking the gears grinding beneath. But soon, Whispers began to spread of cracks in the foundation. Disappearances that no blueprint could explain. The fall accelerated in December 1934 with the assassination of Sergei Kirov, Leningrad party boss, shot in the Smolny Institute's corridors. Whether Stalin ordered the hit or exploited it remains shadowed, but ignited the Great Purge, a tempest of paranoia that devoured the party from within. The show trials of 1936 to 1938 transformed courthouses into theaters of the absurd. Grigory Zinoviev and Lev Kamenev, once Bolshevik luminaries, confessed to Trotskyist plots under duress. Their recantations broadcast nationwide as they begged for bullets over ropes. Admit everything, Stalin reportedly urged interrogators, and remember no mercy. The NKVD, Stalin's secret police under Genrik Yagoda, then Nikolai Yezhov, swelled to 200,000 agents, quotas for enemies of the people circulating like production targets, 1,200 executions in Moscow alone by 1937's end. Engineers confessed to sabotaging dams. Marshals like Mikhail Tukhachevsky, Red Army's rising star, to German espionage, his torture-extracted pleas fracturing military command on the eve of war. Collectivization, launched in 1929, had already cracked the countryside. Kulaks supported Siberia's timber camps, where 1.8 million perished from exposure and starvation. The Holodomor in Ukraine, 1932 to 1933, a man-made famine, claimed 4 million lives. Grain seized for export while border guards shot fleeing peasants, their bodies bloating in fields once golden with wheat. Stalin, from his dacha, reviewed lists, relatives, old Bolsheviks, even his own wife Nadezhda Aliyeva, whose 1932 suicide by pistol, rumored protests against the purges, haunted him with vodka-fueled rages. By 1938, 10 million had cycled to the Gulag archipelago, mines in Kolyma where temperatures plunged to minus 50 degrees Celsius, quarries in Vorkuta where picks struck frozen earth and bone. Yezhov, the bloody dwarf, vanished next, tried for the very excesses he orchestrated. World War II amplified the shadow. The 1939 Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact carved Poland between Nazis and Soviets, but Hitler's 1941 Barbarossa invasion exposed the purge's toll. Red Army officers decimated, leaving green recruits to face panzers at the gates of Moscow. Stalin, steeling himself in the Kremlin as bombs fell, broadcast defiance. Brothers and sisters, he intoned on July 3, 1941, voice cracking only once. Victory at Stalingrad in 1943 turned the tide, but at a cost of 27 million Soviet lives. Famine in Leningrad siege, where residents ate wallpaper paste, rats, each other. Katyn Forest 1940 massacre of 22,000 Polish officers, pine-shrouded pits exhumed by Nazis, underscore the engineer's calculus. Lives as expendable as rivets in a bridge. The investigation unfolded not as a detective's chase, but as a global reckoning piece from defectors' whispers and captured archives. During the war, Allied spies, British Jesuit agents in Tehran, American OSS operatives in Moscow, gleaned fragments, Vera Atkins, interrogating captured NKVD files, traced missing SOE parachutists to Siberian unmarked graves. Post-war, the tide of revelation swelled. In 1949, as Stalin's health waned, strokes leaving him slurring, suspicious of Jewish doctors, the regime's machinery stuttered. His daughter Svetlana's 1967 defection to the U.S. smuggled out diaries detailing the domestic terror. Purges extending to ballet dancers accused of cosmopolitanism. Scientists like Nikolai Vavilov starved in cells for rejecting Lysenkoism. Khrushchev's 1956 secret speech at the XX Congress cracked the vault. 20,000 words denouncing the cult of personality, revealing execution tallies. 681,692 in 1937 to 1938 alone, and Gulag populations peaking at 18 million. Declassified in the 1990s, Politburo minutes exposed Stalin's marginalia. Beat harder, scrawled on interrogation reports. Western scholars, sifting Lubyanka vaults open after 1991 Soviet collapse, quantified the shadow. 20 million dead from purges famine camps, not wartime losses. The pursuit escalated through emigre testimonies. Alexander Solzhenitsyn's The Gulag Archipelago, smuggled west in 1973, mapping the system's veins from arrest vans to frozen barracks. Even in death, clues emerged. Stalin's 1953 autopsy, hushed for decades, noted cerebral hemorrhage amid paranoia-fueled isolation. The trial never came for Stalin himself. His end a quiet irony in a life of orchestrated spectacles. On March 1st, 1953, after a stroke at his Kontsevo dacha, he lay paralyzed for days, aides too terrified to summon aid without orders. Urine pooled on the floor. He died 4 days later, age 74, the Politburo circling like wary heirs. No courtroom drama, but consequences rippled. Beria, NKVD chief, arrested and executed in December 1953 for anti-Soviet activity. His trial a purge in reverse, witnesses detailing rapes, poisonings. Khrushchev's thaw released millions from camps, rehabilitating victims like Tukhachevsky in show reversals. Nuremberg's echoes touched Soviet crimes indirectly. Allied prosecutors, aware of Kadenvaya German evidence, deferred pressure for post-war amity, but the massacre's 1990 admission by Gorbachev etched moral debt. In the aftermath, the engineers' empire endured but fractured. Cold War's Iron Curtain, a Stalinist inheritance. Proxy wars in Korea and Vietnam echoing his realpolitik. Reflection pierces a human core. How a seminary dropout, nursing grudges from Siberian exiles, transmuted resentment into a machine that devoured its makers. Stalin's danger lay not in ideology alone, but its weaponization through bureaucracy. The quiet engineers penned signing death warrants as casually as damn approvals. 20 million graves whisper power's peril. When fear forges a state, it devours a soul, leaving only steel skeletons in the snow. He engineered a worker's paradise, but the foundations were built on unmarked bones, and empires of fear collapse under their own weight. If cases like this fascinate you, subscribe to the Crime O'Clock, where every mystery has a ticking timeline waiting to be uncovered. Case 3. The philosopher's famine, Mao Zedong. In the name of a brighter dawn, he starved a nation, whispering equality while enforcing a hunger that claimed 45 million. Amid the mist-shrouded hills of Hunan province in the dying days of imperial China, Mao Zedong emerged as a scholar son with eyes fixed on distant horizons. Born on December 26, 1893, in the rural village of Shaoshan, where rice paddies stretched like green veins under the Yangtze's shadow, young Mao toiled alongside peasants, his hands calloused from plows before they ever gripped a pen. The Qing dynasty's twilight was a world of emperors and eunuchs, opium wars that carved concessions to foreign devils, and peasant revolts simmering like underground fires. Mao's father, a stern grain merchant, beat ambition into him, sending the boy to Changsha's provincial schools in 1911, just as the Xinhai Revolution toppled the Manchu throne. There, amid Republican fervor, Mao devoured Western classics, Rousseau's Social Contract, Darwin's Evolution, while drilling with revolutionary militias. At 19, he arrived at Peking University as a library assistant, sweeping floors for the elite, but eavesdropping on Li Dejiao's Marxist lectures in the stacks. The Chinese people have always been a brave people, Mao later wrote, but bravery needed direction. By 1921, at the founding of the Chinese Communist Party in a Shanghai girls' school, he was a delegate from Hunan, his lanky frame and thick Hunan accent marking him as provincial yet resolute. The Northern Expedition of 1926 to 1928, allying communists with Chiang Kai-shek's nationalists, thrust him into the fray. As a political instructor, he mapped peasant grievances in his 1927 report on an investigation of the peasant movement, praising Red Guards who beheaded landlords in village squares. Betrayed in the 1927 Shanghai massacre, thousands of communists slain, Mao fled to the Jinggang Mountains, forging the first Soviet base. There at 34, he blended guerrilla tactics with ideology. Political power grows out of the barrel of a gun, he quipped, but it was the peasants' pitchforks that tilled the soil for revolution. The Long March in 1934 to 1935 tested his mettle, 6,000 miles across rivers and snow peaks, evading nationalist encirclements, reducing 100,000 communists to 8,000 survivors. Emerging in Yenin's cave dwellings, Mao reshaped the party in his image. Not urban proletarians, but rural masses as vanguard. Propaganda painted him as a thoughtful philosopher, pipe in mouth, quoting Confucius alongside Marx, nurturing writers like Ding Ling, while purging rivals like Wang Ming. By war's end in 1945, with Japan defeated, Mao's forces swelled to 1 million, their earth-red uniforms a promise of land reform. Chiang's corruption, U.S.-backed but riddled with inflation and graft, tilted the scales. In Beijing's Forbidden City, October 1st, 1949, Mao proclaimed the People's Republic. The Chinese people stood up, he declared a sea of red flags, his voice steady as the Great Wall he invoked. To the world, he was a liberator, hosting Nehru and Tito, his essays on protracted war influencing Vietnam's Ho Chi Minh. Collectivization began modestly, land to the tiller, while Shanghai's neon dimmed under socialist austerity. Mao, in Zongnanhai's compounds, dreamed of a China eclipsing the West, his poetry evoking ancient sages remade in dialectical materialism. But soon, whispers began to spread from the communal kitchens, empty pots echoing louder than slogans. The fall ignited in 1958 with a great leap forward, Mao's audacious bid to vault China into communism overnight, bypassing Soviet-style stages. Surpass Britain in 15 years, he urged at the Lushan Conference, mobilizing 600 million into backyard furnaces and people's communes. Peasants, once landowners, now herded into barracks, their private plots plowed under for collective fields. Steel quotas demanded scrap melted in village kilns, woks, tools, even heirloom gates, yielding useless pig iron while fields lay untended. Lysenkoist agriculture, rejecting genetics for ideological fervor, so close-planted grains that choked in weeds. Behind the image of abundance, billboards boasting bumper harvests, something darker was growing. Falsified reports from cadres, terrified of quotas, inflating yields tenfold. Mao, insulated in his swimsuit diplomacy along the Yangtze, dismissed critics like Peng Dehuai, defense minister, whose Lushan letter warned of famine. Peng vanished into disgrace, his family shamed. By 1959, the truth clawed through. Swollen bellies in Anhui, cannibalism rumors from Gansu, villagers boiling leather belts, digging wild roots, eating clay to fool hunger's gnaw. The 3 years of difficulty, as it was euphemized, peaked in 1960. 45 million dead, not from drought alone, but policy's vice. Grain exported to Moscow for tractors. Border sealed lest refugees expose the lie. In Xinjiang, cadres beat resistors, burying bodies in mass graves. A single county lost 100,000, its river foul with corpses. Mao retreated momentarily, allowing Liu Shaoqi's adjustments. Private plots restored, but resentment festered. The Cultural Revolution of 1966 was his phoenix from ashes, unleashing red guards, teenage zealots in armbands, to purge capitalist roaders. Bombard the headquarters, Mao scrawled, his coat ballooning. Little red books waved like talismans, his likeness on every wall. Universities shuddered. Professors paraded in dunce caps. Lin Biao, Air Force Chief, deified a successor until his 1971 plane crash over Mongolia. Whispers of coup lingering. The philosopher's famine had evolved into chaos. 1.5 million persecuted. Factories idled by factional brawls. The economy contracting 14% in 1967. Nixon's 1972 visit thawed isolation, but Mao, stroke weak in his pavilion, plotted immortality through daughterly men's networks. What investigators found next would change everything, though the pursuit was a labyrinth of sealed archives and survivor silences. During the leap, internal probes like the 1960 Sichuan report, buried for decades, detailed cadres' atrocities, forced feedings of chaff, executions for hoarding millet. Post-Mao, Hua Guofeng's 1976 succession cracked the facade. Deng Xiaoping's reforms in 1978 unearthed the toll. Yang Jixing's tombstone, drawn from provincial files smuggled out, tallied 36 million starved. His own father's death inaccused a personal ledger. Western scholars, from Jasper Becker's Hungry Ghost to Frank Dichoter's Mao's Great Famine, sifted declassified Politburo minutes. Mao's July 1959 directive. It is better to let half the people die, so that the other half can eat their fill. Escalation came via emigre voices. Harry Harding's interviews with rusticated youth, revealing Cultural Revolution suicides like Lao Shi's drowning in a Beijing lake. The 1980s trials of the Gang of Four, Jiang Qing, Mao's widow, shrieking, "I was Chairman Mao's dog." He told Mbite, whom he pointed to, expose the decade excesses. Though Mao himself was lionized, his errors 30%. Full reckoning dawned in the 21st century. 2010's access to famine-era diaries, digitized by dissidents, quantified the human calculus. Children's finger bones in unmarked pits. Party members confessing in Yangzhou tribunals. The trial, fragmented and posthumous, climaxed in Mao's shadow. He died September 9th, 1976, at 82, his body embalmed in Tiananmen like Lenin's, crowds weeping under monsoon rains. No gavel fell on philosopher, but consequences cascaded. The Gang of Four's 1981 verdict, death sentences commuted, unraveled the cult, Deng's truth from facts mantra dismantling communes. Rehabilitation waves restored millions, pensions for leap survivors trickling in the 1990s, though Hunan villages still whisper the 3 bitter years. In the aftermath, China's rise, GDP soaring from 150 billion in 1978 to 18 trillion, owes debts to Mao's foundations, yet the famine scars POC rural demographics, a generation's echo in empty schools. Reflection cuts to the marrow, how a poet revolutionary, scarred by warlord rapes in his youth, wielded dialectics like a scythe, harvesting equality from the living. Mao's danger was philosophy perverted into fiat, utopian blueprints ignoring the body's frail math, where 45 million proved no mere statistic but a nation's hollow core. In the end, the brighter dawn he promised rose, but its light cast long shadows over fields forever fallow. He whispered of people's spring, but sowed a winter that froze the soul of a billion, teaching that hunger's blade cuts deepest when wielded by those who claim to feed. Case 4, the healer's harvest. Pol Pot, a gentle teacher, vowed to purify his people through education, yet his classrooms became killing fields for 2 million innocents. In the languid classrooms of colonial Phnom Penh, Saloth Sar, later known to the world as Pol Pot, was a boy of quiet intellect, his mind wandering from French grammar to the whispers of independence. Born May 19, 1925, in Prexpal village near Kampong Thom, in the Rice Bowl heart of Kampuchea, he grew up in a modest silk-weaving family, the 8th of 9 children to a father who dabbled in Chinese trade. French Indochina's yoke was a velvet glove over an iron fist, rubber plantations bleeding latex for Paris, pagodas echoing with Theravada chants, and urban elites sipping café au lait while peasants bowed in corvée labor. At 14, Saloth entered the Lycée Sisawath, Cambodia's premier school, excelling in math and history under colonial tutors who prized Gallic logic. A scholarship in 1949 whisked him to Paris at 24, joining 1,500 Indo-Chinese students in the City of Light. There, amid Sartre's existentialism and strikes against the Fourth Republic, he drifted from engineering studies at the École Technique to the Khmer Students' Association, where Ho Chi Minh's agents recruited for the Viet Minh. Exposed to Marxism-Leninism in the cellars of the Rue de Commerce, Saloth shed his given name for Pol Pot, a nod to political potential, and penned tracts on agrarian reform. Expelled in 1953 for academic failure, his thesis unfinished amid revolutionary fervor, he returned to Phnom Penh a changed man, teaching at Shamrayan Vicky High School while joining the Khmer People's Revolutionary Party underground. Prince Norodom Sihanouk's neutralist monarchy, a facade of independence, chafed. Pol Pot, at 30, organized cells in the Cardamom Mountains, smuggling arms from Hanoi. The 1960s broodstorm. U.S. bombings in Vietnam spilled napalm over eastern borders, Sihanouk's corruption fattening Swiss accounts while inflation devoured the piastre. In 1963, Pol Pot vanished into Maquis, emerging as leader of the Communist Party of Kampuchea, CPK, in a jungle ceremony lit by kerosene lamps. His persona crystallized, a soft-spoken pedagogue in cadre khakis, spectacles perched on a gentle face, quoting Rousseau on the noble savage. To recruits, he was brother number 1, promising a return to Angkor's glory, self-sufficient villages, free from urban microbes and foreign taint. By 1970, Lon Nol's U.S.-backed coup ousted Sihanouk, igniting civil war. Pol Pot's Khmer Rouge, allied uneasily with Hanoi, swelled from 5,000 to 60,000 guerrillas, their black pajamas blending with teak forests. Propaganda reels depicted them as healers, doctors in hammocks, teachers under banyan trees, harvesting rice with communal sickles. The 1975 fall of Phnom Penh was swift. Tanks rumbling down Monavong Boulevard, citizens cheering liberation from American puppets. Pol Pot, 50, entered the capital in a green Mercedes, his first act of radio broadcast. This is year 0. To the world, he was the unlikely victor, a monkish figure restoring sovereignty, his envoys charming UN delegates with promises of neutrality. The fall came not in betrayal's gasp, but in the silent emptying of cities, a reset button pressed on history itself. On April 17, 1975, Phnom Penh's 2 million awoke to bullhorns. Evacuated for 3 days, the Americans are bombing again. Trucks idled empty. Families trudged boulevards strewn with abandoned wheelchairs, the sick dragged on doors. What investigators later called the evacuation was evacuation's antithesis. Urbanites force-marched the countryside, hospitals abandoned mid-surgery, infants left in bassinets. Behind the image of renewal, factories retooled for tractors, schools for indoctrination, something darker was growing. The CPK's base people versus new people, the latter suspect for education or city ties. Pol Pot's anchor, the organization, was faceless, omnipresent. Its edicts whispered like scripture. Money abolished, market shuttered. Workers logged 12-hour days in irrigation canals, their ration, 3 tins of gruel. Intellectuals, teachers, monks, spectacle wearers, vanished until slang, a former lycée-turned-21 interrogation center, where photographer Nemine documented 14,000 arrivals, only a dozen surviving. Confessions extracted via bamboo whips, waterboarding, electrocution, framed as re-education for CIA phantoms. The healers' harvest peaked in the killing fields. Choangek, 14 kilometers south, where 17,000 met picks to the temples. Bullets saved for war. Babies bash against trees, as one guard later testified. Like ripe fruit. Ethnic minorities, Cham Muslims starved of pork. Vietnamese drowned in the Mekong joined the tally. 1.7 million Cham halved. Pol Pot, from his bamboo command post in the northeast, calibrated the machine. 1976 census masked as harvest reports, but internal memos urged smashing the bourgeois. Year 2 brought purges. Hu Nim, information minister, strung up for Kampuchean soul, poetry too lyrical. Hanoi's 1977 overtures, border skirmishes escalating, were rebuffed. Pol Pot dreamed of exporting revolution to Thailand, his classrooms now charnel houses. The investigation built like a dam against forgetting, small leaks swelling to floods. During the regime, whispers escaped via Thai border refugees. Vickery's 1977 Yale seminars amplifying tales of ghost towns. The Vietnamese invasion. Christmas 1978 shattered the veil. Tanks rolling into Battambang. Soldiers unearthing pits where lime-dusted bones grinned skyward. Phnom Penh liberated January 7th. 1979, Ta Mok's forces fled, leaving S-21's files, 14,000 photos, confession tomes in Khmer script. Francois Panchaud's Cambodia. Year 0, piece from Radio Phnom Penh broadcasts, quantified horror. Elizabeth Becker's dispatches exposed a final solution for cities. Escalation came through tribunals. The 1979 Khmer Rouge trial in absentia, a Hanoi-orchestrated farce executing 20 guards, but planting seeds. Survivor Dutch, S-21's chief, hid in monasteries until 1999 arrest, his 2009 Extraordinary Chambers confession. I was in too deep. Mass grave exhumations. 17,000 at Choangek. Yielded teeth filed to points child femurs. Forensic teams from Australia mapped 20,000 sites, DNA linking fragments to ghosts. The trial consequences delivered fractured justice, a climax deferred by geopolitics. Pol Pot, captured June 1997 in a jungle betrayal by Ta Mok, faced a Khmer Rouge People's Tribunal. House arrest in a thatched hut, his legs bound, ranting of Vietnamese plots. He died April 15, 1998, at 72, heart failure or suicide in An Long Vang, his ashes scattered unceremoniously. The UN-backed ECCC launched 2006 ground slow. Kang Gwek Eve Dutch, sentenced to life in 2012 for 12,000 murders. Nguyen Chia and Q Samphan, ideologues, convicted 2014 for crimes against humanity. Their appeals dragging to 2019 executions denied by age. Revelation stunned. Pol Pot's niece, interrogated at S-21, spared only by anchor's whim. In the aftermath, Cambodia stitched wounds with tourism. Killing Fields museums drawing 500,000 yearly, till slang cells echoing school children's chatter. Reflection haunts the agrarian idol. How a Paris dreamer, radicalized by colonial slights, twisted education into erasure, his purification a scythe through 2 million threads. Pol Pot's danger was a healer's delusion. Year zero is blank slate, ignoring that societies, like bodies, bleed when vivisected. 2 million silence, yet their unearthed voices remind. Revolution's classrooms, when taught by fanatics, graduate-only graves. His lessons promise enlightenment. But the only light in his fields came from pyres, illuminating that some harvest reaps only the reaper's fall. Case 5. The Conquerors' Hoofbeats. Genghis Khan. From the steppes rose a unifier who tamed tribes with mercy's promise. Before his hordes drowned empires in rivers of blood. In the wind-swept grasslands of 12th century Mongolia, where the sky met the earth in an endless blue-gray embrace, Temujin was born into a world of nomadic clans bound by blood feuds and the whisper of horsehair bows. The year was 1162, near the Onan River, in a yurt cluster where the Borjigin tribes felt tense, homes that could fold and flee with the seasons. His father, Yasujii, a chieftain allied to the Mongol Confederation, named him after a rival he'd captured, a gesture of dominance laced with destiny. Temujin's mother, Hoelin, a resilient woman kidnapped from the Merkit tribe, raised him amid the clan's oral epics, tales of sky gods and earth shamans, where warriors proved worth by the scars on their backs. The steppe was a brutal meritocracy. Goats herded by boys of 7, eagles trained on wrists for the hunt, and raids on neighbors as common as summer rains. At 9, Temujin was betrothed to Borte of the Anggerat, a political not to weave alliances, but fate unraveled it swiftly. Yasujii, poisoned at a Tatar feast, left the family exiled. Rivals stripped their herds, leaving Hoelin to forage wild onions and berries, her children skinning marmots for broth. Temujin, hardened by hunger, killed his half-brother Bektar over a fish, his first blood, a fratricide that echoed the clan's code, survival over sentiment. Captured at 15 by the Tichudi, former vassals turned vengeful, he wore a wooden yoke like an ox, plotting escape in the dark. Freedom came through Jamukha, his Anda, blood brother sworn in youth, and they rose as warlords, uniting splinter tribes against the Jurchenjin dynasty to the south, whose great wall snaked like a dragon's spine. By his 20s, Temujin was a figure of quiet command, broad-shouldered, with a voice like distant thunder, his green eyes missing nothing. The curve of falcon's dive, the lie in a scout's report. The 1201 Kurultai, tribal council, at the Black Forest crowned him Genghis Khan, universal ruler, after victory over the Merkits, who had stolen Borte. Her rescue, pregnant with his son Joki, bound him to mercy's myth. He rewarded loyalty lavishly, silks from captured caravans, shamans consulted for omens, while punishing betrayal with slow strangulation, spines snapped over a horse's back. To his people, he was the blue sky sun, codifying the Yasa, laws banning cattle theft, mandating literacy in Uyghur script, promoting women as regents. The steppe bloomed under his vision. Pony Express relays spanning 500 miles in days, ironworkers forging composite bows that pierced mail at 300 yards. By 1206 at 44, the Mongol Ulus stretched from the Altai to the Gobi, a federation of 95 tribes. Their yurts circled in homage. Genghis, in his white-girt Karakoram's cradle, dreamed not conquest but consolidation. A silk road secured. Taxes funneled to granaries against famine's bite. But soon, whispers began to spread along the trade routes, of envoys spurned, arrows loose in reprisal. The fall thundered in 1211 with the invasion of the Jin, whose emperor had executed Genghis's ambassadors, their heads mounted on Zhongdu's, Beijing's, walls. 500,000 horsemen, archers in lamellar armor, wagons of portable city, swept the Yellow River plains, catapulting naphtha firebombs over ramparts, starving garrisons into surrender. I am the flail of God, a Persian chronicler later attributed, but it was steppe calculus. The conquerors' hoofbeats trampling rice fields, cities like Kaifeng reduced to ash after 1209 sieges. Mercy flickered, sparing engineers who built siege engines, adopting Persian siegecraft, but drowned in blood. The 1219 Khwarezmian campaign, sparked by Shah Muhammad II's execution of a Mongol caravan, unleashed apocalypse. Otra's governor, in Nalchuk, boiled the envoys alive in silver. Genghis responded with 200,000 riders. Sacking the Silk Road oasis in 1220, molten silver poured into Nalchuk's eyes and ears. Samarkand's 100,000 fell in days. Artisans spared to swell the horde. The the rest trampled under hooves or beheaded in pyramids of skulls. The Shah fled to an island in the Caspian, dying in exile. His son Jalal al-Din resisted at the Indus in 1221, only for Genghis's famed retreat to lure him into a trap. 30,000 Mongols loose like hounds. Behind the image of unity, tribes intermarried, religions tolerated under shamanistic pluralism. Something darker was growing. The horde's terrorist doctrine, civilian massacres funding the machine. In Xixia, the Tangut Kingdom, 1227's final siege saw rivers run red. Genghis, wounded by an arrow, demanded the king's submission, then razed the capital, burying 300,000 alive in earthen dams. His sons, Joki, Chagatai, Ogidi, Tayi, commanded Tumans of 10,000, their feud simmering like steppe fires. The conqueror, ever the unifier, decreed succession to Ogidi, but his end came in August 1227 at 65, falling from his horse during the Tangut hunt, his death concealed until the deed was done. Corpses of the royal family joining the toll. What investigators found next would change everything. Though the pursuit spanned centuries, peace from bones and ballads. Medieval chroniclers, Giovanni's History of the World Conqueror, Rashid al-Din's Persian Compendium, gleaned from survivors' tales. The 1220 Nishapur sack, where 1.7 million perished, cats and dogs slain to sate the tally. The Secret History of the Mongols, an epic recited around campfires, veiled atrocities in heroic verse. Genghis's birth under a nimbus cloud, his vengeance as cosmic justice. Escalation came through archaeology. 20th century digs at Karakoram unearthed mass graves, arrowheads embedded in Tangut femurs. Carbon-dated pollen in Khwarezm soil showed steppe grasses overtaking orchards. Genetic studies in the 2000s traced Y chromosome markers. 16 million men, today descending from Genghis's lineage, a footprint of systematic rapes as policy. Western explorers like Marco Polo, arriving decades later, marveled at Pax Mongolica's roads but shuddered at the Tartar yoke. Russia's 240 years under the Golden Horde, tribute wagons groaning to Sarai. The trial unfolded in history's grand assize, no courtroom but the empire's unraveling. Genghis died in 1227, body borne secretly to Burkhan Khaldun Mountain. Slaves slain to guard the tomb, its location lost, a final enigma. Consequences cascaded. Ogidi's 1230s pushed west sacked Kievan Rus, Moscow's wooden walls kindling for 500,000 dead. Baghdad's 1258 fall under Hulagu flooded the Tigris with ink from Ray's libraries, 800,000 Abbasid souls. The horde peaked at 40 million square miles, but fractures grew, plagued along trade routes, overextension from Hungary to Korea. By 1368, the Yuan dynasty crumbled in China, Ming rebels toppling Kublai's ghost. In the aftermath, the conqueror's legacy bridged Eurasia, gunpowder to Europe via Mongol sappers, astronomical tables from Moraga Observatory. But at 40 million lives, a demographic chasm. Reflection stirs the dust. How an orphan boy, scarred by betrayal's yoke, forged unity from anarchy, his mercy's promise curdling into the largest contiguous empire through calculated carnage. Genghis's danger was a unifier's blade. Tribes tamed, but civilizations drowned, proving that hoofbeats of progress can thunder over graves, their echoes reshaping maps in bone. He tamed the steppes with a vision of one people, but the rivers he crossed ran red, a reminder that conquest crown weighs heaviest on the conquered. Case 6, the Impaler's Feast. Vlad Dracula, a prince defended his throne with iron resolve, inviting enemies to dine. Unaware his table was staked with their pierced bodies. In the shadowed halls of 15th century Transylvania, where the Carpathians loomed like jagged teeth against Ottoman horizons, Vlad III Dracula was born to a world of fractured loyalties and border skirmishes. The date was likely 1431. In Sigasora's citadel, a Saxon trading town of gabled roofs and guild halls, where his father, Vlad II Dracul, ruled as voivode of Wallachia under the Order of the Dragon, a chivalric pact sworn to defend Christendom. Young Vlad, the second son, grew amid the scent of pine resin and gunpowder, Wallachia a buffer between Hungary's Catholic kings and the Sultan's swelling janissaries, its boyars, landed nobles, plotting like wolves in fur-trimmed caftans. Baptized in the Latin rite, Vlad learned swordplay and falconry from German tutors. His early years gilded by Dracul's 1436 ascension, coins minted with dragon emblems promising stability. But betrayal fractured the idol. In 1442 at 11, Vlad and brother Radu were hostages in Constantinople. Dracul's pact with Sultan Murad II to avert invasion, a velvet chain of diplomacy. The Ottoman court, a labyrinth of harems and divans, schooled them in Turkish, Islam subtleties, and the Sultan's courtly cruelties. Eunuchs flayed for whispers, viziers garrot on silken cords. Vlad, resentful of his gilded cage, chafed under the lessons, his mind etching memories of power precarious edge. The 1444 Varna Crusades rout, where Christian knights drowned in Black Sea shallows, and Dracul's 1447 impalement rivals, stakes like forest saplings lining the Argesh River. Released in 1448 amid chaos, Dracul murdered by boyar assassins. Vlad fled to Moldavia, allying with Uncle Bogdan II. At 17, he tasted command in skirmishes against Hungarian pretenders, his lithe frame clad in chainmail, mustache oiled in the Wallachian style. By 1456, at 25, a coup with Saxon merchants toppled pretender Vladislav II. Dracula, son of the dragon, reclaimed the throne in Tartarus' stone palace. His coronation oath a vow to purge corruption. To his people, he was a restorer. Markets swept of thieves, burned alive in their own fires. Beggars housed in monasteries, nails hammered into palms of dishonest merchants. Foreign envoys marveled at his table, laden with roast boar and Moldavian wine. Unaware the force of the impaled flanked the roads. 20,000 Saxon rebels skewered in 1460, their agony a deterrent-ridden flesh. Vlad's missives to Matthias Corvinus of Hungary brimmed with piety, crusader zeal against infidel, while his raids into Ottoman Bulgaria netted slaves and scorched earth. The 1462 campaign saw him a great plague against the Turks, as a papal envoy noted, leaving Tartarus fields fallow to deny forage, wells poisoned with corpses. Geniality masked the iron. Dinners where guests supped amid the screams of the state, Vlad quipping, "The sight improves the appetite." The fall descended in 1462 like a janissary charge, when Mem II, the conqueror, demanded tribute and Vlad's son as hostage, a renewal of boyhood's yoke. Vlad's refusal ignited war. 150,000 Ottomans crossed the Danube, only to find Wallachia a trap of ambushes. Night raids by 30,000 irregulars, stakes hammered before dawn. The night attack at Tartarus, June 17th, pierced the Sultan's camp. Vlad's banner, a dragon disgorging flames, fluttered amid severed heads. 23,884 Turks slain by his count, their bodies heaped like cordwood. But escalation bred isolation. Boyars fled to Hungary. Saxons decried his dragon's deeds, and Radu, Ottoman Ray's brother, turned Judas with a 250,000-strong force. Mehmed, feigning retreat, baited Vlad into overreach. Radu's defection in August routed the Prince of Poenry, his wife hurling herself from a tower into the Argesh. Fleeing to Transylvania, Vlad sought Corvinus' aid, but found chains, accused of collusion with Mehmed, his 1462 captivity in Budapest's dungeons a farce of forged letters. Behind the image of the defender, churches whitewashed, bridges rebuilt over the Danube, something darker was growing. Paranoia devouring allies, Saxons like those of Brasov nailed the doors for printing libels, their stories of Draculia pamphlets fleeing presses like ravens. The Impaler's feast turned inward. 1465 escape of Antilla merchant aid led to a vengeful return, boyars' wives and children impaled as collateral. Tartarus streets a thicket of 10,000 stakes, the feast of the impaled, where nobles dined before the spike. Ottoman chronicles tallied 80,000 Wallachians dead in purges, forests denuded for timber upright with the dying. What investigators found next would change everything, a mosaic assembled from chronicles and craters. Contemporary accounts, Michael Beheme's 1463 poem, recited at Corvinus' court, detailed the bloodthirsty tyrant feasting amid 30,000 spiked. Slavic Povus tales from Moscow amplified the gore, stakes groaning underweight. The 1476 campaign, Vlad's final Ottoman thrust with Stephen of Moldavia, yielded diaries. Matthias' envoys noting a man of strange countenance, his end in battle. Beheaded by a traitor, had pickling and honey for Mem's boot. Escalation through forensics. 19th century digs at Snagov unearthed no princely bones. Myths of burial in the island monastery debunked. But mass graves near Bucharest revealed iron spikes. Femurs threaded like kebabs. German incunabula, woodcuts of 1499. Spread the legend. Vlad's nails grown through tablecloth in prison, a parable of unslaked thirst. The trial was a shadow play of politics, no bar but the axe. Recrowned in 1475 with Hungarian backing, Vlad ruled 18 months before December 1476 ambush. Lured to a parley, slain by Boyar Basarab Lyota, his head to Constantinople on a pike. Consequences rippled. Radu's puppet regime crumbled. Stephen's Moldavia avenging with border raisings. But the Dracula name endured as caution. Ottoman advance checked. Wallachia thorned till 1514 fall. In the aftermath, the Impaler's shadow birthed Bram Stoker's 1897 vampire, romanticizing terror, while Romania's 20th century nationalists lionize him as anti-Ottoman hero, statues rising in Bucharest. Reflection pierces a feast. How a hostage prince, forged in sultan's halls, wielded resolve as retribution, his table's invitation a lure to the stake. Vlad's danger was the defender's delirium, throne guarded by forests of pain, proving that iron resolve, unchecked, forges not shields but impalements itself. He invited foes to sup at his board, but the true feast was vengeance, a banquet where the host became the horror's heart. Case 7, the Tsar's thunder, Ivan the Terrible, crowned as Russia's guardian angel. He wielded the scepter of reform, until paranoia turned it into an executioner's axe. In the gilded chambers of 16th century Moscow, where the Kremlin's onion domes pierced the sky heavy with birch smoke, Ivan Forvezyevic entered the world as a prince swaddled in silk and prophecy. Born on August 25th, 1530, in the shadow of the Ugar River's frozen banks, he was a grandson of Ivan III, the Gatherer, who had shaken off the Mongol yoke and married a Byzantine princess, claiming Moscow as the Third Rome. Orphaned at 3, his mother Elena Glinskaya poisoned, whispers said, by boyar rivals, Ivan grew amid the intrigue of the Regency court, a frail boy with wide blue eyes and a mop of auburn hair, tutored in Latin and the lives of saints while wolves howl beyond the log walls. The boyars, hereditary nobles in fur-trimmed caftans, circled like courtiers in a bear pit, their factions toppling each other. The Shuiskis exiling the Belskis, poison cups passed in feast halls. Young Ivan shuttled between palaces, learned power's fragility from chronicles read by candlelight, tales of Alexander Nevsky's ice battles, the horde's golden whips. At 8, he ordered the beating of a disloyal boyar, his small hands signing the decree. By 13, the Glinsky Revolt of 1547 saw him unleash the Oprichniki precursors, dragoons torching Moscow's suburbs in a blaze that killed thousands. Crowned Tsar at 16 in the Ouspensky Cathedral, Ivan's voice rang with Orthodox fervor. Autocrat by God's grace, anointed with chrism from the Tsarina's hand. His early reign shimmered with reform. The 1549 Zemsky, Sabor summoning nobles and clergy for laws curbing boyar abuses. The Sedebnik Code standardizing justice. Printing presses birthing Slavonic Bibles. To Muscovy, he was a thunder god. Expanded Kazan in 1552, his cannons, forged by English exiles, breaching the Tatar fortress, Orthodox crosses rising over mosques. The 1550s conquest of Astrakhan opened the Volga to Persian silks, Siberian furs trickling into our bot markets. Ivan, now thunderous at 25, with Anastasia Romanovna, her gentle counsel tempering his rages. Their court buzzed with German clockmakers, Italian architects erecting St. Basil's riot of colors. Livonian War's 1558 spark, seizing Baltic outposts from Teutonic knights. Promise a sea window, Swedish and Polish envoys suing for peace amid a clatter of Tatar hooves. The Tsar, in his fur-lined sables, projected divine right. Frescoes in the Annunciation depicting him as Solomon, his progresses through Novgorod scattering alms to peasants who knelt in the mud. But soon, whispers began to spread through the Izbas, of a shadow lengthening over the throne. The fall cracked open in 1560 with Anastasia's death, arsenic suspected in her chalice, unraveling Ivan's fragile tether. Paranoia bloomed like black mold. Boyars accused of poisoning his light, their estates seized in midnight raids. The Oprichnea, his black-clad terror guard, mounted on black horses with dog heads and broom tails symbolizing purge and sweep. Formed in 1565, Ivan abdicating in a dramatic flight to Alexandrovka, forcing the Zemsky Sabor to beg his return with concessions. The boyars have sold Russia to Lithuania, he thundered in manifestos, carving the realm into Oprichnina heartland and Zemshchina noble lands. Behind the image of expansion, Scoff spared. Siberia's mangers claimed by Cossack atamans. Something darker was growing. The Oprychniki's thunder, galloping through estates at Yule, hanging landowners from rafters, their wives raped in cellars. Novgorod's 1570 sack was apocalypse. Ivan, convinced of treasonous ties to Poland, marched 15,000 strong, sacking the ancient republic over 5 weeks. Monasteries looted, citizens herded onto the frozen Fokhov River, drowned by the thousands as sledges crushed the ice. Bodies piled in the streets, wolves feasting on the Tsar's leavings. Chroniclers tallied 60,000 dead. The city's bells melted for cannon. The Tsar's axe fell inward. Metropolitan Philip, voice of conscience, strangled in his Uspensky vestments for the cry in the Oprychnina. Boyars like Vladimir Staritsky poisoned at Ivan's table. Their heirs blinded. The 1571 Crimean raid. Devlet juries hoard torching Moscow suburbs. 150,000 slaves netted. Stoked ablaze. Ivan flogging himself in processions, his beard streaked white at 41. Heir Ivan Ivanovich, struck down in a 1581 rage, fisted the temple amid a quarrel over Oprychniki excesses, left the throne shadowed by feeble Fever and rumored bastard Dmitri. The thunder turned to whimper. Livonia lost by 1583. Oprychnina dissolved in 1572, but scars eternal. What investigators found next would change everything, though the pursuit was a whispered network of foreign envoys and exiled scribes. English merchants like Anthony Jenkinson, trading furs in the 1550s, smuggled reports to Elizabeth I. The emperor is greatly feared, his cruelty exceedeth all men. Heinrich von Staden, a German Oprychnik defector, penned 1578 memoirs detailing Novgorod horrors, children's heads on pikes, the Fokhov's red ice. Escalation through chronicles. The 16th century Laurentian Codex veiled atrocities in hagiography, but 17th century editions by Remy Palitzin quantified the toll. 100,000 Oprychnina victims, Russia's population halved by war and purge. Archaeology in the 20th century unearthed Alexandrovka's Tsar's court. Torture chambers with iron maidens, mass graves near the Fokhov yielding 500 skulls, blunt trauma marks from sledges. The trial never convened for the Tsar, his end a private storm in Moscow's apothecary garden. On March 18th, 1584, at 54, Ivan collapsed mid-chess game with Boris Godunov. Stroke fell in a hand that gripped the axe. Autopsy revealed mercury poisoning from quack cures, his body swollen like the realm he bloated. Consequences thundered on. Fever's childless reign birthed the time of troubles, 1,598's Rurikid extinction, inviting Polish pretenders, famine claiming a third in 1601 to 1603. Godunov's 1605 lynching, Dmitri's false resurrections. Russia's thrown auction block till Romanov's 1613 dawn. In the aftermath, Ivan's thunder echoed in Peter's reforms, Siberia's vastness a conquest gift, but at 500,000 lives, a demographic thunderclap. Reflection rumbles deep. How a boy-king, orphaned in intrigue's nursery, wielded reform as retribution, his guardian's halo crowning a paranoiac's crown. Ivan's danger was the autocrat's echo, thunder promising rain but delivering deluge, where scepters, once scepters of law, become axes hewing the hand that holds them. He summoned Russia's storm to cleanse the wicked, but the lightning struck his own house, leaving the throne wreathed in the smoke of the innocent. Case 8. The Countess's Bath, Elizabeth Bathory. Nobility's pearl. She bathed in the youth of virgins, sipping their lifeblood in a castle where screams echoed like lullabies. In the mist-veiled spires of 16th century Hungary, where the Tatra Mountains cradled a realm of Habsburg intrigue and Ottoman shadows, Elizabeth Bathory was born to a world of velvet tapestries and whispered poisons. The date was August 7, 1560, in the stone fortress of Ext, seat of the Bathory dynasty, Protestant magnates whose eagle crests adorned battle standards from Mohawks to Vienna. Granddaughter of Black Georgy, voivode of Transylvania who crushed peasant revolts with impaled rebels, Elizabeth grew in a household where Latin tutors schooled her in Cicero alongside tales of vampire Strigoi haunting Carpathian passes. Her father, Georgy Bathory, a diplomat navigating Sigismund's court, and mother Anna, kin to Polish kings, doted on their only daughter amid siblings' games of mock sieges. At 6, betrothed to distant cousin Ferenc Nadasdy, the black hero of Hungarian lore, she joined his Sarver estate, a renaissance pile of courtyards and alchemical labs, learning estate management. falconry in the orchards, embroidery by candlelight, and the rod for tardy maids. Hungary's patchwork, divided by 1,560 SXS partition into Royal, Ottoman, and Transylvanian thirds, bred resilience. Ursabit, tall and raven hair with porcelain skin and piercing eyes, absorbed the era's cruelties. Turkish raids snatching villagers for the galleys, witch burnings in Pressburg squares. At 15, with Invarad's cathedral to 26-year-old Ferenc, her dowry swelled his lands to 17 castles. The Union forged a power block, Bathory mines yielding silver for Habsburg bribes. As countess, she managed Sarva during Ferenc's Turkish wars, her letters crisp with troop levies and grain tallies. To the nobility, she was a pearl, patroness of poets like István Magyari, her salons echoing with lute and lute, birthing for children, Anna, Orshaya, Andras, Pal, while rumors swirled a bastard Georgie with a peasant. Ferenc's 1604 death left her widowed at 44, ensconced in Cactus Castle's eyrie. Perched on crags above the Var River, its dungeons cool with perpetual damp. Ursabit, in widow's weeds, delved deeper into the occult. Thurzo family grimoires on blood rites, Italian courtesans whispering of eternal youth via virgin's essence. Her court buzzed with Hungarian gentry. Gypsy fiddlers at feasts where roast swan steamed on silver, unaware the cellars held iron cages. The fall seeped like blood from a lancet, beginning in 1604 with isolation's creep. Widowed, Ursabit retreated to Cactus, her beauty's preservation a private right. Maids summoned for training, their screams muffled by stone. What started as slaps for spills escalated. Pins jabbed under nails, naked floggings in the great hall, the countess in fur slippers watching with a smile. Behind the image of matronly grace, donations to Protestant schools, petitions to Emperor Rudolph II for tax relief. Something darker was growing. The bath of youth, maids lure with promises of silk, their blood drawn in medicinal phlebotomies, warmed in copper tubs where Ursabit soaked, pale limbs steaming amid the crimson. Accomplices coalesced. Anna Darvulia, occultist nurse prescribing the rites. Fixco Georgie, groom wielding the whip. Ilona Joe, which brewing salve from fat rendering cauldrons. Victims mounted. Peasant girls from Kazan, lured by false jobs, vanishing into the castle's maw. 650 by some tallies, their bones gnawed by rats in oubliettes. One survivor, 13-year-old Sarah Sendry, fled in 1610, gasping to villagers of the Blood Lady's hunger, but fear sealed lips till 1610's cascade. Daughter Orshaya's marriage brokered by Uncle Palatine Georgie Thurzo, who dispatched investigators after complaints from noble fathers. Daughters returned battered or not at all. Raids on December 30th uncovered horrors. 50 girls in chains, mutilated corpses in the chapel crypt, blood-stiffened linens in the solar. Ursabit, cornered in her chambers, raged at the intrusion, her quill indicting Thurzo as embezzler of her estates. What investigators found next would change everything, a grim excavation under torchlight. Thurzo's December 1610 inquest, shielded from Habsburg eyes to avert Bathory's scandal, interviewed 300 witnesses. Maids detailing the Iron Virgin, a spiked cabinet closing on the naked. The tower room, where teeth were yanked for necklaces. Accomplices confessed under torture. Darvulia's deathbed ravings of satanic pacts. Joas ledger of 80 victims in 1609 alone. Tallies climbing to 650, though graves yielded only 80 skeletons. Femurs fractured from falls down stairs disguised as accidents. Escalation through trials. February 1611 hearings in Bick. Fixco naming Ursabit's glee at the Red Snow after beatings. Noble status spared at Iraq, but petitions to Vienna, sealed by Matthias Two-Sphere Bathory reprisals. Halted public spectacle. Survivor accounts, smuggled to Polish courts, amplified the Bass myth. Blood not drunk, but absorbed through pores, a Renaissance wrinkle cure twisted to vampiric ends. The trial consequences climax in confinement's hush. No gavel but the mason's chisel. Ursabit, bricked into Cactus Tower Chamber, for windows nailed shut, a slit for bread and water. Endured for years of isolation, her pleas scrawled on hems smuggled out, raging at Thurzo's land grabs. She died August 21st, 1614 at 54, suffocated or starved, body autopsied in secret. Veins unremarkable, no devil's mark. Then buried unmarked in ex-crypt, exhumed and reinterred under a peasant's mound by fearful kin. Accomplices burned, Joe and Dyrrhachius' fingers severed, then torched alive in Pressburg on January 13th, 1611. Fixco hanged, his body quartered. Revelation stunned. Ledger showing 300 virgins bled over a decade, noble girls among them, their families compensated in silver to buy silence. In the aftermath, the Bathory name faded to folklore, Cactus crumbling to romantic ruin, her tale fueling Stoker's Dracula via 18th century broadsides. Hungry 1620s witch hunts echoed her shadow, but reflection gleams cold. How nobility's pearl, schooled in power's poisons, transmuted vanity into veracity, her baths elixir of entitlement. Ursabet's danger was the aristocrat's abyss. Youth preserved another's agony, proving that screams in castles, like lullabies, soothe only the singer's soul. She sought eternity in a maiden's glow, but the only immortality was infamy, a crimson legacy staining the stones she called home. Case 9. The Hun Storm. Attila the Hun. Europe's scourge rode in as a barbarian king, demanding tribute with grin, while his blades carved fear into the continent's heart. In the sun-baked steppes of 5th century Pannonia, where the Danube's lazy bends cradled a patchwork of Roman ruins and nomadic felt tents, Attila was born into a legacy of bows and blood odes. The year was 406, son of Munzuk, a chieftain of the Huns, fierce horsemen descended from Xiongnu hordes who had toppled Han China centuries prior. The Huns' world was one of endless migration. Tribes clashed in the shadow of the Carpathians, scavenging from Goths and Alans, their short bows, composite of horn and sinew, loosing arrows like hornets from galloping saddles. Orphaned young, Attila and Uncle Rua, or Rugula, were raised in the royal clan's wagons, learning the art of a lasso before the alphabet, wrestling wolves for sport under shamanic skies where Tungri, the eternal blue heaven, decreed the strong to rule. The Roman Empire, fracturing into east and west, was their uneasy neighbor. Constantinople's walls gleaming with Theodosian gold, but its legions thinned by barbarian federates. At 12, Attila was sent as hostage to the court of Theodosius II, Emperor of the East. His small frame clad in silk tunics, dining with eunuchs while plotting in whispers with Scythian envoys. There he absorbed the empire's decay, bribes flowing to Hunnic envoys like the Tigris, senators like Anatolius haggling tribute in amphory of wine and gold. Returned by 424 at 18, he rose through raids on the eastern frontier, sacking Margus in 435, monasteries gutted for relics, their monks chant silence by axes. Rua's death in 430 elevated Attila and brother blooded to co-kings, their court at Tisso's confluence a bazaar of looted silver, Gothic slaves pouring mead, Persian envoys bartering spices. Attila, broad-faced with flat nose and eyes like flint, projected the grin of a traitor. Mustache oiled, horsehair cloak clasped with a golden brooch, his speeches blending guttural Hunnic with broken Latin. To his warriors, he was a sky-sent scourge, rewarding loyalty with rings from Alaric's Visigoth horde. The 439 treaty with Theodosius doubled tribute to 950 pounds of gold yearly, Huns as federati policing the borders. By 445, whispers of Bleda's softness, his Roman concubines, baths scented with Gaulish lavender, fuel fratricide, Bleda fell in a hunting accident, his body left for steppe eagles. Attila, now sole king at 39, dreamed of a Hunnic imperium. Envoys to Attila's camp at Nisus, where the Vistula's winds carried scent of empire from the Rhine to the Caucasus. But soon, whispers began to spread from the imperial courts, of broken odes, a storm gathering in the east. The fall erupted in 447 with the invasion of the Balkans, Attila's pretext a murdered envoy and disputed tribute. 80,000 Huns, lancers and scale mail, wagons circled his fortresses. Thunder crossed the Hemus mountains, their feigned retreats luring Theodosian legions into ambushes where caltrops fell horses, arrows darkened the sun. Nisus, Niche, fell in days, its aqueducts choked with corpses. Philippopolis and Serdica followed, catapults hurling naphtha pots over walls. The flames roared drowning pleas for quarter. The grass will not grow where his horses trod, Priscus the diplomat noted in his embassy journal, but it was the blades that carved. Civilians herded into slave trains, bishops ransomed for chalices. The 450 piece at Anatolius's tent near Aquileia tripled gold to 2,100 pounds annually, Huns withdrawing with 6,000 captives. Behind the image of the bargainer, Feasts where Attila supped on wooden platters while Romans dined in gold, his sons Elik and Dengizik wrestling for sport. Something darker was growing. The storm's heart, fueled by a Burgundian girl's prophecy of Roman betrayal. Honoria, sister of Western Emperor Valentinian III, smuggled her ring in 449 with a plea: "Save me from marriage, share my throne." Attila, interpreting it as betrothal, demanded half the West as dowry in 451, Valentinian's head on a pike. The Vandal sack of Rome in 455 emboldened him, crossing the Rhine in spring. 50,000 Huns allied with Gepids and Ostrogoths ravaged Gaul. Orleans' walls breached, Metz's bishop fleeing with a holy tunic. Aetius, Roman magister, rallied a coalition. Visigoths under Theodoric I, Franks and Mail, clashing at the Catalonian plains in June. The battle's dust choked the sky. Huns feathered arrows versus Gothic longswords. Attila's retreat signaled by burning wagons as beacons. Theodoric fell, but the storm broke. Attila withdrew, Gaul scarred with 165,000 graves. Italy's 452 invasion saw Aquileia razed, refugees fleeing the lagoons at Birth Venice. Milan trembling until Pope Leo, the first parley on the Mincio, Attila's grin masking retreat for lack of siege engines. The Scourge's thunder peaked in 453. Wedding night to Ildico, a Germanic bride, where too much wine and a loosened sword belt ended him at 47. Throat slit, his body shrouded in blood-soaked horsehair, buried secretly with molten gold poured over slaves to seal the tomb. What investigators found next would change everything. A chronicle piece from refugees' firesides. Priscus's 448 embassy dispatch, smuggled to Theodosius's archives, detailed the court. Attila's wooden throne amid silk tents, his son's gladiatorial games with captured Romans. Jordanes' Gitica, 551 synthesis of Cassiodorus, quantified the Catalonian toll. Rivers of blood, 300,000 dead, Huns retreat a rout masked as parley. Escalation through archaeology. 19th century Hungarian digs at Tissot yielded arrowheads etched with runic curses. Mass graves near the Marne with Hunnic fibulae on Gothic bones. 2010's DNA from Venetian lagoons tracing Aquileia's exiles to Illyrian stock. Byzantine annals, like Marcellinus comes, tallied tributes drain. Eastern Empire bankrupted. Solidai devalued 50% by 450. The trial was fate's swift gavel. No chains but succession's blade. Attila's 453 death splintered the horde. Sons warring. Elik slain by Gepids at Nideo in 454. Dengizic's head Constantinople in 469. Consequences cascaded. Aetius assassinated by Valentinian in 454. His half-barbarian blood avenged in the emperor's gut. Vandal Gaiseric sacking Rome unopposed. The West's fall accelerated. Hunnic remnants absorbed into Avars. Their storm dissipated. In the aftermath, Attila's shadow forged Europe. Ostrogoths under Theodoric ruling Italy till 535. The migration periods churned birthing medieval nations. But 500,000 lives, a continental scar. Reflection howls across the plains. How a hostage princeling, schooled in Roman guile, transmuted tribute into terror, his grin belying the blade's arc. Attila's danger was the Scourge's charisma. Tribes united in raid, empires humbled by horsemen, proving that storms, once unchained, flood not just fields but the fragile dams of civilization. He demanded the world's gold with horsemen's laugh. But the only tribute his blades collected was fear, a currency that buys no dawn. Case 10. The monk's madness. Grigory Rasputin. A holy man healed the royal heir with whispered prayers, until his influence poisoned a dynasty from the shadows of the throne. In the frozen vastness of 19th century Siberia, where the Ob River's icy grip mirrored the Tsar's iron rule, Grigory Yefimovich Rasputin was born to a world of magiques and miracles. The date was January 21st, 1869, in the peat village of Pokrovskoye, Tobolsk Governorate, a cluster of izbas where wolves prowled birch woods and icons wept resin tears. Son of Yefim, a illiterate peasant and postman turned horse thief, and Anna, a devout spinner, young Grigory toiled in fields, his broad face and piercing gray eyes marking him as Grishka the devil for brawls and petty crimes. The Russian Empire's twilight brewed unrest. Serfdom's 1861 abolition freeing 23 million, but chaining them to redemption debts. Siberian exiles like Decembrists whispering revolution in salt mines. At 18, Grigory wed Praskovia, fathering 7, but visions haunted him, drowning in the Tura River, emerging born again as a Stranic, wandering pilgrim, drawn to the KHOSDY sect's ecstatic rites, flagellation and communal sinning for divine forgiveness. He roamed the Verkachori's monasteries, absorbing Stari's wisdom. To save the soul, one must know sin's depths. By 1903, at 34, he arrived in Kazan, his matted beard and hypnotic gaze drawing crowds. Rumors swirled healing touches, curing a landlord's fever with river water blessed under moonlight. Tsar Nicholas II's court, isolated in Tsarskoye Selo's Alexander Palace, yearned for solace. Alexandra Fyodorovna, Hessian princess, would in 1894 bore 4 daughters before Alexei in 1904, the hemophiliac heir whose porphyric bruises mocked the Romanov line's frailty. Nicholas, a weak-chinned colonel in the Horse Guards, doted on Alex, their letters a torrent of endearments amid Russo-Japanese war's defeats. Rasputin's ascent began in 1905 via Anna Varabova, the Tsarina's lady-in-waiting, who smuggled into prayer meetings. His first audience, October 1906, saw him clasp Alexei's hand, murmuring, "The little one will not die." To the court, he was a starets, a holy fool in peasant blouse, cross dangling on a chain, his prayers easing the boy's bleeds where Viennese doctors failed. By 1908, telegrams flew. "God has heard your prayer. The child is saved." Petersburg salons buzzed. Rasputin rechristened the Dark One, dined with grand duchesses, his vodka-soaked prophecies blending orthodoxy with KHOSDY erotica. Nicholas dubbed him our friend. Alexandra her joy, oblivious to scandals, bar brawls in the Astoria Hotel, seductions of ballerinas like Matilda Kshinskia. The monk's madness bloomed in influence. Ministers dismissed on whims, like Vladimir Kokovtsov for fiscal prudence. His letters to the Tsar, illiterate scrawls via secretaries, urging wariness of German shadows. But soon, whispers began to spread to the Winter Palace, of a peasant shadow eclipsing the sun. The fall accelerated with World War I's 1914 thunder, Nicholas assuming command of the Stavka, leaving Alexander and Rasputin to steer the ship of state. The monk's telegrams from Siberia, "Do not attack Austria," ignored but his sway deepened, advising against mobilization, then blessing the icons as shells fell on Warsaw. Behind the image of the healer, nights at Gorkovaya 64, where pilgrims sought his gaze, Alexei's crises averted by Father Grigory's herbs. Something darker was growing. The poison proximity, Rasputin's carousing with Prince Yusupov, orgies in the Moika Palace cellars where cocaine dusted mirrors. Alexandra, isolated by German birth amid Russification pogroms, leaned harder. Dismissing war minister Sakhamonov for corruption Rasputin fingered, elevating quacks like Professor Badmeave whose elixirs masked the court's rot. By 1915 at 46, Rasputin's grin widened, beard trimmed, captain tailored, his prophecies turning political. The throne will fall if you war on Bulgaria. Nobles recoiled. Grand Duke Nikolai Nikolaevich, stabbed a commander, slashed at him with a saber in jest. The monks, "I forgive you," fueling the myth. The Brusilov offensive's 1916 gains masked the rear's collapse. Bread riots in Petrograd, munition scandals bleeding the treasury. Rasputin's letters urged peace with Germany, Alex's kin, while his dark forces cabal, Protopopov as interior minister, ordering police to ignore his escapades, stoked treason whispers. The monk's madness peaked in December 1916. Audience with the Tsarina, foretelling blood like rivers if Nicholas didn't yield. Yusupov's plot crystallized, the prince enlisting Dr. Lazarevert for cyanide, Purishkevich for patriotism. What investigators found next would change everything, though the pursuit was a frenzy of autopsies and alibis. The murder unfolded December 30th in the Moika. Rasputin, lured by Yusupov's promise of meeting with Princess Irina, downed cakes laced with enough potassium cyanide for a regiment. Untouched, his peasant stomach fortified by drink. Shots rang. Felix's .455 Webley to the gut, Purishkevich's to the forehead. Yet he rose, clawing throats, fleeing to the courtyard where a final bullet felled him. Dragged to the Neva, weights tied. His body surfaced January 1st, 1917, ice cracks revealing the monk's frozen rictus. Autopsy by Dr. Kosratov revealed drowning as killer, lungs waterlogged, 3 bullets paths, no poison trace. Rumors of superhuman vitality swirled. KHOSDY writes suspected. Escalation through diaries. Yusupov's Memoirs, 1927, detailing the hyena's resilience. Alexander's sealed letters, open post-revolution, pleading, save him for Russia. Kerensky's 1917 probe, amid provisional government's chaos. Interviewed 200, Vyrabova's tearful defense. Iliador's holy devil exposing KHOSDY orgies. Soviet archives, declassified 1990s. Yielded telegrams, 1,500 from Rasputin to the front. Quantifying sway, 12 ministers toppled, Rasputin's eyes and ears in the Ochronophiles. The trial was aristocracy's desperate right. No court but the Tsar's fury. Nicholas exiled Yusupov and Dmitry Pavlovich to Persia, a slap on the wrist. Purishkevich boasted in the Duma, I killed Rasputin to save Russia. Revelations cascaded. The monks will scrawl pre-death, cursing the Romanovs. Alexander's icon corner. Icons kissed by his bloodied lips. Consequences toppled like dominoes. The murder splash ignited strikes. February Revolution's 300,000 marching on Petrograd. Nicholas abdicating March 15th, 1917. The dynasty's poison fully distilled. In the aftermath, Rasputin's ghost haunted the Bolsheviks' rise. Lenin's train from Switzerland sealing the void. The Romanovs' Ekaterinburg execution echoing the Neva's chill. Reflection pierces the icons. How a Siberian Stranik, forge in sin's forge, wielded fate as filament, his prayers healing a boy but hollowing an empire. Rasputin's danger was a madman's magnetism. Shadows cast long by throne-side whispers, where influence unchecked ferments not salvation, but the very rot it claims to cure. The heir survived his bleeds, but the dynasty drowned in the monk's wake. He whispered salvation to the suffering, but his prayers were the first drops of deluge that swept a 300-year throne into oblivion. What's your take on this story? Share your thoughts below and subscribe to the Crime O'Clock, because the next mystery is already ticking. If these stories of unchecked ambition left you questioning the fragile line between guardian and monster, drop your thoughts in the comments below. What's the most dangerous figure from history that haunts you? And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for Crime O'Clock, your front row seat to the next unsolved enigma ticking away in the dark.